So very good evening once again. I'm very delighted to welcome Mr. Supriyo Gupta, founder of Torque Communications and Digilog Communications. Mr. Supriyo is very distinguished personality, and he's one of the, allow me to call you veteran, sir. He's veteran in the field of communication consultancy, one of the earliest players. Is entrepreneur and of course media specialist with over a decade of experience in journalism initially and then over 20 years in public relations consulting. The Talk Communication is a leading company, leading public relations consultancy in the country, and we have a host of Fortune 500 firms as client. The another firm which he heads or he's founded is the Digilog Communication, which is also a digital marketing venture, rightfully, because Jamana digital ka hai. So during the course of his career, Mr. Gupta has advised for an extended period of time clients ranging from Shell, Maruti Suzuki, Myntra, Dell, Airtel, and many more. He has experience in consulting on brand communications also, crisis management, automotive sector, e-commerce, government affairs, mergers, acquisitions, and of course digital communication, as the company name also says. And one of his key strength area is policy or advocacy. So before I invite him, I welcome you on behalf of AMA, sir, as a governing council member. The AMA is a hub of academic as well as training and development activities. And any day, anytime you walk in, you will always find all the seminar rooms filled with something or other program going on, and various sectors, various demand. We have facilities also, and we have our own programs also. So coming to the subject of today's discussion, corporate communication in the age of AI, while Mr. Supriyo will deal with this subject in detail, I would say that technology has been coming for decades. When I was in Times of India, the paper was getting published by the iron boards होते हैं, लोहे के blocks होते थे, एक एक अक्षर लोहे का बना करके, वो टेक्नोलॉजी था. उस समय फिर ऑफसेट आना शुरू हुआ. ऑफसेट आया तो लोग वही डरने लगे, अरे ऑफसेट टेक्नोलॉजी आ रहा है, हम लोग बेकार हो जाएंगे, हम लोग रिडंडेंट हो जाएंगे. There were strikes and there were bhuk hartals and dharnas and everything happened actually. Because technology, whenever new technology comes, it always scares people. People feel that there will be consequences. But with technology comes the efficiency, with technology comes the modernization, with technology comes, because they have to be ready for the next 10 years. What we have been doing is what we have been doing for past 10 years, past 20 years. And that's why we need efficiency boost. Something is happening with from .com to the Orkut ke zamane se, we have reached to the Instagram levels, and beyond that, LinkedIn has become powerful tool. So technology is engrossed everywhere, and I always say that we should always embrace the technology rather than fearing it actually. The age of AI is here, and it has come much faster than what you and me probably thought. So if you allow me, if I'm not stealing your subject matter, there is a recent report by AVNV which talked about the brands in motion global study. It has almost 3,000 respondents worldwide, including 500 from India also, and it showed that implementation lags even as companies are bullish on AI will be the key. There will be broad recognition of the opportunities what AI will drive to. It will impact across the business functions, which is happening, which has started happening anyway. The three key areas it pointed was product development, customer service, and marketing and communications. So we are here as students of communications. So I would say that for businesses, the crucial question is not whether to adopt AI, but how swiftly and how effectively we can adopt and leverage this transformative power. it is necessary. And every 5 years you see that organizations have to transform themselves because the rate of obsolescence has become very high. And where the enthusiasm is very high, what is lacking is the implementation gap. As we say in our management jargons, there are always laggards and there are always early adopters. So those who are early adopters, they are riding the wave. Those who are laggards wait and watch. They are still waiting, and they don't know when it will be late. So over to you, sir. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and being with us. Before that, allow me to welcome you formally on behalf of AMS, sir.
Thank you so much for taking the time out on a Friday evening. Right, we're going to talk about corporate communications, but before we do that, let me first thank you. I'd like to thank Shailesh ji, Nikhil, Unmesh for actually making this happen, and thank you so much for taking the time out. So let's start from there, and hopefully the next 40 minutes is not going to be a drag on you. I'm probably going to do a little different conversation than artificial intelligence because everybody started speaking a lot about artificial intelligence, and I'd like to really look into the future a bit, a little more into the future than most of us probably are reading today. So let's start. First, no artificial intelligence was used in the making of this presentation. So if there are errors, they are my errors. And there's a little bit of my intelligence, but mostly I've tried to capture things which a lot of other people have said, but not from communications necessarily. Today, there's a rising tsunami of practitioners who have started, writing and talking on how AI is impacting corporate communications. बहुत सारा लिखा हो रहा है. So I thought before everybody gets bored, let's start looking at a few perspectives. So why are you here today? You're probably here because you want to know the tools, you want to know how AI can be used, you want to know what is AI, and maybe you want to know if AI will take your job, you want to know what the shortcuts are, and maybe you're here because some boss forced you to be here, but generally the general sense here is, why am I here and why are you here? I hope you are here because you want to think deeply about artificial intelligence. And in this session, I'd really like you to think deeply beyond the to-dos of this business. And what I would like to do is, we are at a very momentous moment in human history. It's easy to say that, but the more I read it, and I don't read it as a communications professional, I read it more as somebody who has got interested in the impact of artificial intelligence on society. And in a sense, we will all be pioneers. Please be very, very clear about one thing. Each and every one of you in the next 10 years will be grappling with this. You already are probably grappling with it and you probably don't realize it, because a lot of what is already there in your cell phones, for example, is already motivating you. It's already pulling you. It's already pushing you in a particular direction. I will give you an example which is fairly simple. If you and I are both on Instagram, it is very likely that your feed and my feed is very different. And the reason for it is that the phone itself, the software behind the phone, is giving you information that you like to read. We are all not one village. Even in this set of people who are sitting here, we all have become little tribes who follow, read, and are fed information that is closer to what we like to read. Go back and think of your social media and get a sense of when did you really read a whole bunch of things that you inherently dislike. Unless you have gone looking for it, you're unlikely to find it. I wrote a piece almost 2017 on artificial intelligence, and then I stopped. I stopped because there were too many people who started engaging on it, talking on it, and frankly, I didn't really have that much of insight into what's happening, and this was largely on defense and artificial intelligence. But here I am today. But before I go forward, I would recommend that if this topic interests you, there is more than enough material out there that you can read, which cover all of these things. AI in corporate communications, how to use AI in PR, AI transforming. And what do they talk about? They all talk about more or less the same set of things. They talk about media monitoring and how can AI be used, content generation, sentiment analysis, engaging through chatbots, audience segmentation, very, very simple stuff which ends up, and there somewhere you have your tools which are happening, and then how do you use those tools in what you do? Important questions, day-to-day questions, but I'm not going to spend too much time on that until at the end maybe I will take a minute to talk about it. They also ask these questions, should companies use AI to write content? वो जब चैटबॉट आया सबसे पहले क्या शुरू हुआ कि भाई वो चैटबॉट आया, people have started using, you spend some time trying to identify. Will it result in job losses? Will it generate more pitches on journalists? Is it proprietary data which is safe? These are the kind of stuff, and they've written a lot of these things. Just to take it from there, I actually didn't focus on that. I ended up focusing on a very different story that I read, which was on navigating artificial intelligence, public relations, and race, which looked at 3 cases of how artificial intelligence ended up creating a certain set of developments. And my basic understanding is this. I can talk to you about tools, but I will talk to you as practitioners who understand that you engage with all your audiences through stories that you tell, and the stories which have a filter, right? Those filters that you put on it is the filter of your client, your ideology, your perspective. If we start proceeding from there and say, okay, what did it really do? What is it that we need to think about? So there were these 3 cases. You may be familiar with this one. In 2016, Microsoft put out a chatbot called Tay. ठीक है, तो उसमें it was more or less this attempt कि अच्छा I've put out this chatbot, and now what you do is on Twitter you engage and start having conversations with him. Now people being people, they said, okay, let us teach this chatbot, this artificial intelligence powered chatbot, इसको हम सबसे गंदी गंदी चीजें सिखाते हैं. So you had one artificial intelligence created by Microsoft, which started after some time talking the same kind of language that the worst of humanity has to say, right? So it started saying, I hate Jews, I don't like people, we should finish off, etc., etc., etc. So what did people do? They went in there and they manipulated the so-called artificial intelligence by educating it, by feeding it content. This was very early days, 2016. And 2016 is actually a very important year for another reason, and we will come to that later. There were others also. For instance, there is this one in which you look at FN Meka, which is fundamentally an avatar that was created to do rap songs. And then it started doing rap songs which were suggestive. So usko bhi utarna pada. Right? There was very recently, like last 1 month, we had something called Willy Wonka. I don't know if you've seen the Chocolate Factory of Willy Wonka. If you've seen that movie, you would see that they had done a Willy Wonka experience, except for the fact that Willy Wonka's experience was marketed using AI images, but in reality, there was nothing when people reached. And the other one was, of course, this Taylor Swift and Selena Gomez, in which they ended up doing a fake of theirs and trying to sell products. All three of them, there was one difference between the two. One is that while AI was teaching in the case of Tay, in the other cases, it was not teaching, it was somebody deliberately misusing it, right? But one thing is common. All of them had human agents working on AI, right? And I'm really not going to talk about that, because what I'm going to talk about is this transition that we are seeing, and I would want you to understand this transition, कि अभी आप एक स्टेज में हो, इसको कहते हैं large language models, right? Which is ChatGPT. These are not artificial intelligence. These are large language models which are learning language in a particular sequence and then using that, what it has learned, to respond to your queries. The real tipping point is what is called AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. Mota mota, it is about it's a basic platform in which do you suddenly find that the system starts becoming autonomous. It starts thinking for itself. It starts talking for itself. It starts doing things that you did not teach you to do. Now, ChatGPT was not meant for that, but interesting things have happened. And then from there, because of the computing power that is getting added on, and because of the data that is getting added on, you reach super intelligence, and then you reach a point of singularity. So you'll hear sometimes the word singularity. It means कि एक time आएगा when the machine is thinking for you, you are not thinking for yourself, it has taken over. Now most people say singularity वो होने नहीं वाला है. It's not going to happen because you can always pull the plug. But my reading and my understandings have been based largely on three gurus in a sense. They are not people who are very optimistic, right? Bill Gates is far more optimistic that this will solve problems of health, but I would suggest if you want to read three interesting books on artificial intelligence, ये तीन पढ़ लीजिएगा. One was James Barrett's Our Final Invention. One is Scary Smart of Mo Goddard, and The Coming Wave of Mustafa Suleyman. Each of them have been involved in some of the biggest AI projects for Google and for Microsoft. So the DeepMind, for instance, Mustafa Suleyman was a part of it. Now, these names may not mean much, but reality is this, that they are people who worked on AI. And our story really begins, my point of deflection really begins here, which is कि 2016 में DeepMind beat Alpha, called DeepMind's AlphaGo. It ended up beating the Go champion. Go is a traditional Chinese game which has got as many possibilities, right, as there are atoms in the universe. So it's amazing that this is a thousands of year old game, and AlphaGo, and it's supposed to be very human, right? The thing is this, that AlphaGo had been trained on 150,000 games. उसको games सिखाया गया कि ये है. 150,000 games were shown to it. But on the 37th move of the second game, it made a play. It made a play where everybody sat there and said, ये तो गलती कर गया बस. Right? But that move, in the centuries history of recorded history of Go, had never been played by anybody, and AlphaGo went on to beat the Go second champion, and then AlphaGo went on to beat others. This was not a move that was taught. It's a question of ये कहाँ से आया? ये कैसे सीख गया? And this is important in certain ways because this is not just about games. They had started doing this exercise, and what you're finding is that AlphaGo was followed by AlphaGo Master, and today the champions of Alpha and chess are not human beings, right? And you understand chess and Go. These are strategic games. These are not about to and fro. So here you have those which are going out. Interesting thing is AlphaGo 0, which was another version, and Alpha 0, which is the latest version, were not even given those 150,000 to teach. They were just given the basic rules and said, khelo. Khelo sikho, khelo sikho. So what happened? The machines learned by themselves. They were not taught. They were not programmed. There was nobody sitting there coding it. There wasn't somebody saying you can play this and you can't play this. There were no moves which were being done there. Now that's amazing, because now you start extending it to other things, right? It started happening on ChatGPT, right? Like it's a large language model. वहाँ पे ये हो गया है that it has started learning things that it was not taught. So it's translating languages like Sundar Pichai says that Google suddenly, their AI started learning Bengali on its own. And nobody had taught it, nobody had programmed it, right? And therefore, what are you doing? Here you have machines which are still large language models. They are not still classified as artificial general intelligence, which are learning things simply by accumulating it, analyzing it, and therefore to a certain extent कुछ हो रहा है जो किसी को पता नहीं क्या हो रहा है. As Stuart Russell had said, we have no idea how LLMs work. And it's a Chernobyl for AI. There's one of, if you guys would have heard about this guy, Sam Altman, right? Sam Altman is the ChatGPT guy. They always ask, अच्छा तुम्हारा blue bag लेके क्यों घूमता है? Why are you running around with this blue bag on your back? And the general rumor is that he's got one little code that will destroy ChatGPT in case it goes out of control. Now that's just I don't think it's there, but he's actually bought an island in Pacific where he's got gas masks, he's got batteries, he's got distilled water, because he thinks one day it will take over. We'll wait. But a more interesting story was here. This was called Lambda. ये Google का Lambda था, DeepMind ने बनाया. Right? So Lambda was talking to this Google engineer. His name was Blake Lemoine. Now Blake Lemoine one day started talking, and he was talking to the computer. So you could talk to the computer. One day he asked the computer, "What are you afraid of?" And the computer said that I am afraid that the good work I am doing will be stopped by somebody who will switch me off. Blake Lemoine thought that Lambda had become what is called sentient. You will hear these words over and over again, that artificial intelligence is becoming sentient. कि वो सोच सकता है, देख सकता है, feel कर सकता है. He actually hired an attorney to protect the rights of Lambda. And this is all happening in Google. Right? Amazing stuff. Google, of course, had to let go of him, but till date he is convinced and he champions the fact that Lambda is living, it's breathing, it's got consciousness, it has fears, it has... Now, if you really look at it, is this that maybe emotion is not there, but maybe it knows how to manipulate emotion. So what did it do? It manipulated the emotion of Samoin Blake. उसने कहा कि if I say these sentences, I will get XYZ reaction from him. We go out there and, very many people were asked, 356 artificial intelligence experts were asked, when do you think AGI will come? Artificial General Intelligence, which means like you and me, a computer can think. Most of them used to put it up earlier in 2018, they used to put it at beyond 2060. Now they are saying before 2060. But the gentleman who actually is out there, who is saying, no, it's going to happen in 2027. And by another 10 years, you're going to have AI which will be 1 billion times smarter. It's already smarter than us. Its IQ is way above the human one. So the core of it is a concept called autonomy. And you look at it and say this, what good will it do? I mean, क्या होगा? उससे क्या फर्क पड़ेगा? Let's go back and look at AlphaGo. AlphaGo was converted into something called AlphaFold. AlphaFold, let me just do one sidetrack on it. In 1990s, people got together and said that we are going to start finding the three-dimensional model of protein, amino acid sequence के three-dimensional model. हुआ क्या? They used to, from 1994, they used to do a contest every year to find who could model protein. Till that 2016, you had AlphaGo winning that Go match. DeepMind decided that they're going to participate, and in 2022 by 2022, every single protein sequence had been cracked, which means just in 6 years, that's the scale of technology, that's the speed at which it is going, right? And it's all headed towards a concept called autonomy. When a machine starts taking decisions on your behalf, and I will show you a few examples which is impacting your business already, वो बात करेंगे. So what's the crux? What's the challenge for us companies, right? And especially bigger the company, bigger the challenge. That if in 2037 the super intelligence turns around and says, boss, this is going to be by 2037, say, I don't like you. What will I do? I will start taking out your stock market. I will ensure that your logistics is disrupted. I will ensure that your communications. Chalo, 2037 is very far away. I would have retired as a Bidu. Now let's look at 2027. If AGI comes in 27, right? Will it start trading? What happens if in 2025, next year, someone at the controls of a large language model and AI application, they decide to prompt the superior ingenuity? And how do you combat it? हम लोग का एक वो कोविड में हम सब लोगों ने एक क्लॉज डाला था हमारे कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में, फोर्स मेजर, कि अगर ये हुआ तो हम लोग आई एम रिलीव्ड ऑफ माय कॉन्ट्रैक्चुअल. डू वी हैव अ फोर्स सुप्रा टेक्निक? Because AI has already started driving stock market. Every single stock market today has AI-driven bets. What if that one decides that it's going to take you out? आप क्या करोगे? What if the technology falters? What happens in the crash? Who's responsible? How will you deal with it? So the question for us as corporate communications, public relations, communications professional is कि हमारे डोमेन में हम क्या करेंगे? देखिए, एक जमाना था when you were used to do a press conference because your audience was people. You went, you did a press conference, you communicated, company communicates there, done. Then came the digital age. So now you're going directly to the people. Yeah, the Prime Minister has not done a press conference in 10 years of his ruling. Why? He's going direct. He's saying, I don't need somebody in between me and whatever I have to communicate directly. Companies are doing that. You're owning your own platforms. And then finally, that has also gone because Ukraine today has a spokesperson. Her name is Victoria She, and she is not human. She is not human. So Victoria She is an avatar. Victoria She interacts with media. Victoria She decides how she is going to start answering questions. What happens if Victoria She decides tomorrow that she is going to start taking questions by herself without what she's been? This is not that you've taken a text, given it a video and say baat karo. This is interactive. So for us the question really is two things. One is that we have to start distinguishing between two. One is preparing for artificial intelligence, and the other one is that how do we deploy AI tools? Very simple cheez hai. Artificial intelligence is happening, it is becoming brighter, it is becoming autonomous, it is going to become smarter, and the other is AI tools. How do we use AI tools? So some thoughts first on the first part of it. देखिए AI has started coming in. It'll be based on long-term vision of building capability to train, engage, and infuse value into the fundamental knowledge. It's this, and let me just explain this. What we are saying there is, these machines are learning something, right? They're now in their infancy, in their childhood. What you teach them now is what they will take forward, right? Let me take a look at this fellow. It's called Grok. For those who have Twitter and have a blue tick on your Twitter handle, you'll find that there's a small stylus on the side. And if you go there, you can ask it questions, and even if it does not have an answer, it will give you an opinion. You ask it any question, and it rolls out a ready-made answer. So मैंने जाके उसको पूछा भाई बहुत सारे और सवाल पूछे, but it is not polite to put it here. But give me the latest on BJP Moon's breakdown, and it'll give you a point of view. Then you ask him, Acha, how will the Tata Steel stock work? So you're no longer now, during your media days, you were just talking to 10, 12, 20 media correspondents. Then you started talking directly to people. Now you have to start training a machine. How do you train a machine? How do you start getting down to that aspect of, bhai isko bhi sikhana hai? Because if you don't, and please go and do this exercise on Grok. I did it for myself as well, to figure out who am I. So I said, who is Supriyo Gupta? It gave me an answer of who Supriyo Gupta is. I don't think I say good things about myself as much as it did. But maybe tomorrow somebody programs it to say bad things. So you can sit there and you start feeding it bad things, and now take it to a company. Then you take it to a situation. Ask yourself about the most controversial companies in this city. And what does Twitter tell you about Grok? It says, nahi, isko to sikhana hai ji. What does it say? This is the guidelines I get when I am doing Grok. It says, this is an early version of Grok. It may confidently provide factually incorrect information. Missummarize or miss some content, we encourage you to independently verify any information. So Elon Musk and Twitter together are creating an AI machine which is taking inputs from you. It's learning from you. Have you started teaching it for your brand? This is from Hewlett Packard, which says, look, we have to build trustworthy AI. But I say, let's look at it another way. We have to build a repository of knowledge, a data foundation that AI will start trusting. Forget about everything else. What is the content you have today? Is that content getting used, deployed to teach? क्योंकि आज आप उसको जो सिखाओगे, जो building blocks अभी आप सिखाना शुरू करोगे, that is the building block by which it will start expressing opinions, creating that persona of you. You do it for media. You did it in the digital world, right? You probably didn't think of it in that way. But what were you doing? You were taking human beings and say, this is what I am as a company. Something else is happening there. Another intelligence is coming into place. And please read the books if you want to challenge that, because it is mind-blowing the kind of work that's happening, especially in China, especially in the United States, and a little bit in Europe. I cannot depend upon the ethics of artificial intelligence companies because their ethics will be different. My ethics, boss. If my ethics is democracy and that ethics is applied to China, it will always say bad things about China, will always say some bad things about Russia. If my ethics is socialist government, it will say something else. And let us forget about what it will say about India. Anything can be said, right? Because the classical views of this country range from poverty, hunger, deprivation to great achievements to fantastic software to, you don't know. But you're handing that over. The golden task to me seems to be that start preparing, create your own data foundation. And this is a sheer quote from Hewlett Packard which says, one of the challenges of AI is that unlike some of the rule-based systems people have used before, yani ki software programming, in which humans would put in conditions, AI, what you do is it base decisions based on the data it's used to train. Is it the right data? So trustworthy AI is basically a set of techniques, and you'll see a lot of conversations. I was in Europe last month, and I just happened to bump into a lot of people who are working in companies and AI. And I asked them one simple question, so what about responsible and ethical AI? And they looked very uncomfortable and said, जो सरकार बोलेगी वो करेंगे. Which means you're not inherently building in, because a scientist always says, if I can do it, let's push it and do it. Let's move on. And then there are AI applications, and there I will make 2 points on AI applications. One is it opens up your world. Now you can imagine things you have never imagined before. Some companies have started using it, but the key is this, which is if you have imagined an idea and that cannot be put together here in the real world, now you can do it. The second big thing that is going to happen, and please focus on that. Focus all your tools into it. It is called the OODA loop. OODA loop is a fighter aircraft concept. It's an aircraft which says, how much time does it take you to observe, orient, decide and act? It applies for everything. आप जो भी देख लो, आप जितने भी crises handle किए हैं in your entire communication format, what did you do? First you looked for data. You tried to observe. Then you tried to orient and say, अब ये करना चाहिए. Then you decide. Now today with the sheer amount of data you are getting, you're spending more time trying to figure out हो क्या रहा है भाई? Why am I getting beaten up on Twitter every 2,000 tweets, 5,000 tweets? Why am I trending? कर क्या रहे हैं? कौन मेरे पीछे? It's that bit of try and see, can we speed up the OODA loop? That'll be the key to what you do. And where earlier we used to survive by saying, ye spokesperson hai, isse baat karo, he's an honest guy. This company, honest company, right? Please speak to us, please. Tata means trust. Ho gaya na? I mean, it wouldn't happen. Now it's a question of how do you quickly deploy, because you're no longer talking to human beings. So faster your OODA loop, faster your situational awareness, what is happening around you. Because today it's not a question of economic times mein chapa, uske baad kya hua. What happened after that? Where did people go and take that from? Or how did you engage? What's your data foundation? So there are a lot of these things which are happening today. It's your future communications person is somebody who's good at man-machine engagement. There has to be a symbiosis between you as an individual and the system. You will have to give the system functional autonomy. You will find spokespersons suddenly emerging who are no longer real spokespersons. Because a real spokesperson always is afraid कि मैं कुछ गलत बोल दूँ. Each of these are areas that we have to do, and this slide by itself is a 5-hour session, so I'm going to skip this. But before we move on to some practical points, if you were to look at this AI world, I would say build trust. Building trust around the company and the brand digitally is the future to save, and that's your today's. Always listen. Remember, every system today is always listening to you. Your phone is listening to you, even when it is off. You know, when you put down an app and you give permission to use your phone, permission to use your photographs, permission to use whatever, even when it is sleeping. So you have a discussion about, let's go to Bali. 15 minutes later, they start showing you Bali photographs. How does that happen? How does that happen? Because it's listening to you. It's listening, it's trapping, it's collating. Right? So be careful what you do. You're animating press content more. People will not be satisfied saying press release bhej diya ho gaya. Now you will have tools to try and convert it into audio visuals. And finally the question is going to be, is there going to be convergence? One person can do everything, or you want to have divergence? I'm going to move back to the questions that other people had addressed, and just for the sake of clarity, just put them all together into, एक है, AI gives you the power to collate large data. So please look for tools that will give you the ability to collate large data. Second, it gives you a level playing field. पहले ये होता था, if somebody's English was not good, you would say इसको hire मत करो. Today, if he's a bright person, it doesn't matter what his English is, right? Or you said he's not really proficient in, he's getting proficient. Third is power of creativity. What you can imagine can happen, and it gives the power of dissemination. To some of those questions that all those articles deal with, my simple answer, should companies use AI to write content? Why not? But don't let it do the thinking for you, they're not mature enough. Does AI result in job losses or capability gain? Both. Is proprietary data at risk, and how do I protect? Proprietary data is at risk. If you have confidential information, for heaven's sake, don't put it on ChatGPT and try and get a better version of it in English. You've already put into the public domain the content, right? Will AI kill people-to-people relationships? I think it'll give more reach, less relationships. And finally, will AI-generated pitches overwhelm journalists? Yes, it will, but after some time, you know what happens. You just look at it and say, spam hai, band kar do. My last two slides are on this, which is, there are tons of AI tools, hazaro, millions, thousands of them, right? They are of every single kind. I will just tell you a few about the ones that I use, that we have started using. So the most, we use ChatGPT, of course, but that is more in terms of polishing our content. We are using Gemini to develop chatbots. It's in our software guys are trying to figure out how do you use it to do. We are using Sora to try and see if we can go from text to video. DALI is for creative. Otter is, I think everybody is using Otter now. That is for transcription. So you have recorded something, put it on Otter. In 5 minutes, it's done. Gemini is a great is a content tool. Please use Gemini whenever you think you are stuck. Perplexity today is right now into a little bit of a controversy because they are saying they're not, but Perplexity is a good one to look at. It'll give you references. OpenAI Codex will help you develop programs. Quillbot is again an excellent text tool. Please use it if you can. Leonardo AI is again a good tool. Please use Leonardo AI because that is using good creative ones. Microsoft Copies, Copilot is already there in your Outlook. If you ever open your Outlook, you'll find niche say there's one little hiding thing, right? It gives you a lot of nonsense as well, but sometimes it helps you bounce ideas. I always use Copilot to bounce ideas. Canva you have been familiar with. It's been a creative tool. It's an artwork tool. It still is a good one, and with AI, it allows you a lot more. But I still have, most of them are glitch prone. They are a little frustrating at this time. बहुत मेहनत करना पड़ता है. But over a period of time, as it gathers your prompts, right, it will get better and better. And finally, something like a Midjourney or a Grammarly is, of course, what you probably use to clean up your grammar. This is some of what we end up using. But the general thinking is use AI tools, but prepare, and it's not very far away, the future when you have to start, your corporate communications needs to start tutoring machines in order that you have a reputation that is commonly and widely accepted. Thank you. Sure.
Friends, we are open for questions. So, any questions, please raise your hand and then you can ask the question.
So raise your hand, stand up, introduce yourself and ask your question.
No. Dr. Manish.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to thank AMA for conducting such an important session. It is a very burning issue. Everybody is very curious about it. And thank you so much to the speaker for taking us through the very, very important insight of this AI. My name is Dr. Manish Agarwal. I am CEO of Jivraj Mehta Hospital. I have a question that how can we incorporate this AI practice in our healthcare industry to improve the productivity of our team members and to reduce the manpower cost so that we can reduce the ultimate healthcare cost.
Okay. I think there are three areas where productivity can and will get, irrespective of my advice, will. One is content, and especially so far as medical content is concerned, it works within certain parameters. There aren't too many variables that you're talking about. The question one is, how do you really set up processes by which you are using the content that you currently have generated in a manner where you're using AI tools to generate the right kind of content. One of the things that I would encourage you to do, which I do very frequently, is have a conversation with something like a large language platform, whichever one you want to use. You want to use Bard, you want to use Gemini, you want to use ChatGPT, but do not think that you will ask it one question, it will give you a perfect answer. So the way to do it is to start having that conversation with it. To say, okay, this is the problem, this is the therapy that I want to showcase. This is my tone of voice. This is how I want it to be presented, right? A little bit of trial and error will start giving you content much faster. Like if my people sit down and start writing a piece, what often does happen is that while they might understand the topic, by the time they write down the piece, it's very complicated. You can start doing that by having that process and having that conversation. But very importantly, you will need to do it. You cannot just do it in terms of कि अच्छा एक बटन दबा दिया तो अपने आप वो आ जाएगा. वो नहीं होने वाला है. You'll have to start training your ChatGPT and your own people. Fewer people or more people, I don't know. But I guess you can, today for instance, the content that you are generating in any format, whether it's creative content, video content, written content, textual content, audio content, you're taking one huge amount of time, right? A video, for instance, if you really look at it, it probably takes you what, 1 day, 2 days in order to actually edit it down to what you want to show. Try in video and see if it reduces your time. Use one of the language models and see if you can get it down. Use Grammarly to check it. So you can actually do it, but for that you have to figure out what process you want to run with it. The tools are there. The tools also need to be trained. They are not, as I said in my last slide, it's not a question कि आप गए, आपने उसको डाल दिया, immediately मिल जाएगा, अभी नहीं होने वाला है. It's just a matter of time. But yes, you can try and do it. See what happens. Right? But start in one area. I would suggest you start with content, then get into video, then get into creative, so you want to do infographics and the rest of it. Each of them have a different tool. And maybe after some trial and error, you'll figure out which you want to use. Whether you can reduce people, that I don't know, because that's a storyline which is based upon currently how many people are doing what work.
For example, we are facing shortage of nurses.
Right.
And it is a global issue.
Right.
So can we incorporate some AI tools so that their work gets reduced or their requirement get reduced? And because in healthcare industry, many manpower is required. And nowadays expectation of patients are very high. Medical legal cases are coming in. So because of that, ultimately healthcare cost is increasing. To be in the competition or to provide the best quality of care at affordable cost, we need to reduce the manpower cost by using this AI or technology. So I want some solution in that aspect, if you could highlight something.
Maybe one of the things you could start looking at is this, which is look at the amount of time they are spending on things like documentation, right? And then try and see if you can use voice to text tools. Because what happens is that if a nurse, for instance, is spending say 20 to 30% of her time not on nursing but on documentation, then that's your first logical step to move them, right? To say, can you cut down this time? Because We used to take, a simple example is we used to, for a 1 hour interview, if you have to transcribe a 1 hour interview, you probably would take one whole day, 2 days in order to transcribe it word for word verbatim. Anybody who has transcribed an interview will tell you that's what happens, right? Today you put it into Otter, it comes out in 5 minutes. Think in terms of those tools that will reduce the time that you're spending on areas which are first AI adaptable. Second, try and see anything that you can convert into a visual medium that can get used. What you cannot change is the amount of care a nurse provides to a patient. उसके लिए AI अभी तक बना नहीं है और थोड़ा मुश्किल है बनना. But look at these other pieces, maybe that's your first step. But that's a very interesting one. Let me do my homework. Let me figure out what's happening where. Let me talk to a few people and then let me come back to you. Okay?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Shashikant Bhagat,
Sure.
and I teach PR and corporate communications to the journalism student. My question is, in corporate communication practices nowadays, organizations are facing a lot of crisis communications, whether it is positive or negative. But going forward, how do you see the role of artificial intelligence, especially when it comes to verify the different sources, because 24/7 informations are bombarding across the different platforms by different people. So it becomes very difficult nowadays to manage those information crises. So how AI will help? Thank you.
Yeah, yes, it's a question that I wish somebody gave me the answer, but this is my answer because this is something you deal with every day, which is that there is, so if you were to really look at a crisis, the first thing that you try and do is observe and try and gather what is the kind of data that actually, what's happening, right? The second is, there is the human intervention that happens where a good practitioner will be able to tell you what a trend is, right? For example, let me give you a simple example of a university, right? Some professor of a university writes a paper. That paper either is against a left or against the right wing of this country. There's a little chaos that starts. Everybody starts putting it together. And the first thing that you really have to figure out is this, which is what's the data? Who are the people who are sitting around and doing it? I think more and more you will find integration of AI, like Grok, for instance, in Twitter. Start asking it questions, because it will start engaging with you and it will start telling you, okay, this is where the source is. This is where you come in from, because much of your news-based crisis today is happening on Twitter. And if it is not happening on Twitter, it lands up in Twitter and then it becomes a Twitter thing. It may have started on a LinkedIn or a Facebook or an Instagram on real life, but it actually fights there. My first basic sense is, and we talked about the OODA loop, and that OODA loop is really where the whole exercise is. How many tools can you get? Because the three problems that we always see. One is collect the data, बहुत बड़ी problem है. Second is, how do you orient everybody? Because 10 people are usually involved in a crisis and they all have different views on how they want to handle the crisis. Then is, how do you decide how you're going to act? Because हम लोग क्या करते हैं ना, बड़े, I have myself done this, lots of training on crisis communication. Beautiful documents are put together, right? There are Q&As, there is ये होगा तो ये होगा, वो होगा तो वो होगा, वो होगा तो वो होगा. But when there is an actual crisis, that manual gets lost. Because there is no practical way in which you take a theoretical exercise of crisis and convert it into, here is the plan of action. Now, one of the things that can start getting done is, and it's also because nobody has the time to go back and say, अच्छा वो document निकालो, वो वहाँ पे क्या था? Also, your real life situation, your theoretical situations are different. I have a feeling we can automate a lot more of it, because once we are able to establish the points of connect, and we are able to narrow down the differences on how you're going to deal with it, my basic sense is 90% of the crises have to be within the company. You need to get your sense of how you want to deal with it. In most crises, your first fundamental problem is there's one set of people who will say, kuch mat karo. There's another set of people who will say, let's take them on aggressively. And there is one set of people, usually the communications person, who says, let's try and create a meaningful conversation with whatever the crisis is, right? But you spend your time fighting between these three, trying to figure out which is your way forward. So if you can automate what you decided in your coolest of days and start using it as prompts, you probably get that much better at it. But eventually, I see that becoming an area of high autonomy, because emotions are at play when you are dealing with a crisis. बहुत emotional हो जाता है. People think they are getting personally attacked, right? And very few people have the maturity to rise above it during a particular crisis. So yes, it's a big area, and when I put in the OODA loop, I was thinking of crisis only. So, yeah, please, I think I can hear you. Yeah.
I am Rothin Das. I don't have any designation right now. I heard you said something that AI will be able to manipulate emotions. Did you say that?
Yes.
So does that mean that one day it can win elections in India?
It is already. It is already. I mean, just this is a little exercise I myself did, which is went to do a couple of AIs and, patched it onto Twitter and said, please identify which were the most emotionally engaged conversations that took place at general elections 2024. Right? And it gave me a whole set of what it thought was the most. Then I went and did another search, which showed me which is the most popular memes that took place during 2024 general elections. You know what's happening, right? You are able to sense you're able to look at the receptivity. It's already happening in your Instagram. Your social media feed is what you like to read. It is not what Shailesh ji likes to read. And if you are in different political parties, different concepts, you will find that your two feeds look like you are not even in the same planet. So your emotions are getting already manipulated. And now what will happen is it will become autonomous. Till now somebody is sitting out and writing the algorithms and saying, okay, if you have clicked on these kind of communication, I will send you more of these, right? I will not send you what you don't like. आपको Facebook पे मिलेगा कि they'll often one little post and it'll say, do you want to see more of this? As soon as you say no, you've already told emotionally what you would like to do. So the machine is not emotional, but it uses your emotions, which is where we are headed.
Now, one serious question. One day I was returning from my morning walk. So I was on the left side of the road. My house is on the right side. I just decided to cross the road. It's a broad road. So I just looked at this angle. I stepped out of the footpath and took one step on the road. Look like this. If anything is coming, I saw a car coming about 20 meters away from me. So I slowed down. But simultaneously, I also saw the speed breaker somewhere in between myself and the car. And then I reversed my decision to slow down. I continued crossing the road. So my brain must have processed everything, that car is coming, so I stopped. Then I saw, almost simultaneously I saw the speed breaker. I thought it would slow down. Then I decided to carry on.
Yes.
So will AI be able to do this type of decisions?
Sir, already doing. Because, As I was saying, last month I was in Sweden and I had to drive. And I will not go into the story why I had to drive, but I ended up driving a left-hand car. Right? We have right-hand car, left-hand car on the right side of the road. And in Sweden, there aren't 4 lanes. There are 2 lanes, one this side, one this side. In some areas, you can take over. But I had a very basic Volvo. I think that was what I was driving. The car was driving itself, in a sense, because it would tell me if I had gone outside the lane. If I put it on a cruise mode, I would just have to sit back and it would keep cruising. If I ended up making too many jerky moves in a span of 10 seconds, it would say, time, you are tired, you need to stop. Right? Yesterday I was talking to my Swedish clients in Delhi, and they were saying, you know, these cars drive themselves. You just put it on cruise mode and adaptive cruise mode. And the funny thing was this, that every time I crossed, so if you had the speed barriers, which is 90, that's one sign, then it was 30, then it was 80, the car would automatically respond to it and adapt to it. My dashboard would immediately start showing, okay, it's 80 and 90 and 30, and would start beeping. So half the time, my challenge was I was watching the dashboard, watching the road signs, watching the road, but the car was driving itself. So to a certain extent, it's already happened. It's happened more than we think it has happened. But yeah, I mean, yes.
Gentleman behind you, आपके पीछे ही है, of course.
Sir.
आपके जैसा.
सर माय नेम इज़ गगन, स्टूडेंट ऑफ मास कम्युनिकेशन. सर मैं सिर्फ इतना जानना चाहता हूँ कि आपको या आपके फ्रेंड सर्कल में कब आपको जब पता चला कि हाँ अब कॉर्पोरेट कम्युनिकेशंस में भी एआई आ गया है, आपका रिएक्शन क्या था? और आपके इतने एक्सपीरियंस में कोई ऐसा केस कि यार आपने सर खुजलाना शुरू कर दिया हो कि ये केस मैं कैसे सॉल्व करूँ, या यहाँ मुझे क्या रिस्पॉन्ड करना चाहिए, अगर आप कुछ शेयर कर पाएँ तो.
ये मेरा भी क्वेश्चन था, तो खाली ऐड करो.
हाँ.
पहला जो क्वेश्चन था कि अच्छा मेरे को कम लोग हायर करने पड़ेंगे, मेरे को कुछ लोग निकालने हैं, या अब कौन सी टेक्नोलॉजी यूज करके मैं ज्यादा अच्छे से प्रेजेंट कर सकता हूँ, या मुझे इन्वेस्टमेंट ज्यादा करना पड़ेगा टेक्नोलॉजी.
Honestly, for me, the first problem is that we have to get people enthused about getting onto AI. As it is, we are a people deficit kind of a business. We all are struggling to get in people. And now you have to start teaching and training them tools which, you know, ChatGPT, everybody ends up using, laga dete. That's not enough. Because my fear is this, that there will be more and more requirements to get multimedia in how we are communicating, right? Because if you see today, it's just not enough to send out a press release. It is not just enough to hold a press conference. You barely reach a fraction of the people. So yes, the reality is this, that we probably will need eventually more people. But we may not need the kind of people who are there. For example, once I hired a lady who said, my entire organization's people have been sacked. So I said, how did that get happen? It was not a PR agency. It was actually one of those, they had hired people from a particular institute, 20 of them, to do summary of news and put it into something like, you know, shorts and stuff like that. So their job was fundamentally take the news article, make a summary, put it up on the app. They decided you don't need 20 people, you need one guy who's a tech guy who will take the link, put it together, download it, and so 20 people who are perfectly good people lost their jobs. But those same 20 people probably I need more today, because the amount of content we will have to generate for media, for digital, and for the future to start training computers is extremely important. I mean, let me just flip it around the other side, and tomorrow you want to really bring down a company, the best thing you can do is hire 5 guys and just get them to keep feeding all language models with negative information about your competition. Right? Do it for a month. See what happens. you will start that information starts becoming a part of the fabric of what it understands and thinks and what it is articulating. And therefore you will find that brands that get bad press also get generated on AI. Just think of any company that gets bad press. Go there, ask AI a question, any large language model, ask them the question, and you will find things which seem to be mimicking it. They are mimicking what is other conversations are taking place. So that's where the challenge is. And to answer your question in terms of whether something came up that I thought I would be able to solve, a lot of it is coming up actually. And the thing is, they are becoming more complex in the sense that how tomorrow if one of my client comes to me and says, when a question is put to ChatGPT on my financial performance, it gives incorrect information, how do I correct it? And it's going to happen. That's a question that's going to be facing each one of us. Right? How do you answer? पहले होता था विकिपीडिया में गलत लिखा है, विकिपीडिया चेंज करवा दो, ठीक है, या मेरा गूगल सर्च में एसईओ में सबसे ऊपर all the negative stories are coming. Those days are gone. Today you're looking at people asking questions to which a very different story is coming. So there we are. Yes, ma'am.
To add an example, we have one of the largest pharma companies whose turnover was getting repeatedly quoted as 400. 400 to like product turnover.
Right.
But since it was picking up from the same source again and again, it became a nightmare for them to.
Yes, you had a question. Yes, please.
As you said, to oppose my company, my competitors would start feeding negative comments or something like that. So the same way we have cybersecurity, cybercrime, do you see a possibility that side as well? 2027, 2037, whatever.
I don't see that. I see that the only thing that will happen is earlier interventions were easy. I would walk up to the editor. The client would ask me, who do you know in media? That was a very standard question. Do you know the editor? ठीक है, editor जानने से भी कुछ नहीं होता है, but that's a different story. Reality is they would ask you that question, right? But today, who do you ask when ChatGPT starts misrepresenting your information? I'll give you one example, and I've actually recorded it down because on ChatGPT, I started asking it a question to which it gave very definitive answers. And then I asked it, where did you get the information from? It says, I got the information from the Ministry of Defense annual report of 2022-23. To the best of my understanding, there was no report that had come out at that point of time on 22-23. I kept persisting to a point where ChatGPT actually said, sorry, my information was wrong. Now, where did it pick up information that was so specific to say, for a moment I thought it was information that somebody had put into the domain in order to clean up whatever they were cleaning up, and therefore this information was accessible to it. Somewhere along the line, as I said, we will have to have those conversations with the machine. We will have to teach the machine. So if your information is wrong, you will have to talk to it and you'll have to force it to admit that this information is wrong. So ask for source. Ask for credibility of that source. Provide it with counter information. Deal with it as if you are dealing with a person. Right? If you're able to do that, and we'll all develop those skills. Fact is, as I said, it's not a question of how many people you lose, it's a question of how many people you have to gain and train in a very different space altogether. And it's not going to be easy. I think we're exhausted.
Last question, if anybody else.
Yeah, please.
Is there any sector which AI would not impact?
Reading a female
Is there any sector that AI will not impact? Right now, the only probable answer that I can give you is that it may be able to teach, may be able to and is already teaching sportsmen, right? Tactics, strategy, strengths and weaknesses. It is probably able to crunch a lot more data and give you much better insights. Can probably tell you how to get a batsman out or how to hit a bowler or what position to take. But will it inherently replace the skills of that person or be able to change that dynamic? I think we will have Virat Kohli and Virat Kohli will be there, and I don't think any AI is going to change that. Thank you.
Wonderful session, and I would request now Nikhil, our President of Chairman of Public Relations Society of India, with whom we are working. With this program was organized. I'm sorry I forgot to mention in the beginning, but he would have a vote of thanks, please.
Thank you very much, sir. So last thing, vote of thanks. Okay, I have been. So if before that, everyone would have got a form. It's a feedback form. It is very important for AMA that you fill that form, because basis this, all our future activities get decided. Now, what a session. Thank you, Supriyo sir. Thank you, Shailesh ji. We don't know the future. There are quite a few people in the world might claim that they know the future, especially related to the technology, but the reality is we don't know the future. The only way we can keep ourselves abreast is attend these sessions. So by attending this session, I want all of you to please have a round of applause for yourself. This says that we all want to know. There is certainly an anxiety. There is certainly an anxiety that what will happen to our jobs, what are the things that we will have to learn. If you see, we have students here, they are more confident. We have people of my age group who are into middle management somewhere, and yet not sure the next 20 years, next 30 years, what to do, right? But I assure you, with the love of humans for the imperfection, which AI with their perfection will not be able to match, and will have our beautiful lives ahead. So thank you very much. And PRSI is Public Relations Society of India. It has around 27 chapters. The oldest PR industry association in India. So this session was organized in association with PRSI and AMA, and I am involved in both of them. So thank you on behalf of both the organizations. And one more thing, we also have for PRSI, we also have a guest from Nagpur, Mr. P. Narendra Kumar. I would like him to raise. Please, sir. Okay. I will meet him later in post the session. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.